The topic of this segment of our 9 body systems is the intestinal system. The intestinal word evokes in most people the idea of the small intestine included in this system. The small intestine, its function is digestion. We deal with that in the digestive system. Within this system, we work with just the large intestine, starting from the ileocecal valve right here where this small intestine attaches, this large organ down here in the lower portion of our body. Its primary function is to take most or all of the moisture that's left from the processing of your digestion out of the small intestine, passes through the ileocecal valve, stores this food, debris, this is a waste container, stores it in here and continues to draw moisture out of it and keeps it in a consistency that you are able to carry around comfortably for about 12 hours. Actually, somewhere between 8 and 12. And there's a few people that stretch the 12 number as being acceptable. 8 to 12 is ideal. We shouldn't store anything in this area more than about 8 to 12 hours. So you eat your food. Peristaltic action begins here at the mouth. There's this wave of action down the esophagus. This wave-like movement starts to massage the food in your stomach. There's a wave-like movement out of the stomach into the small intestine. There's a wave of movement, just like ripples in a pond. Moves on through the small intestine, through the ileocecal valve, into the large intestine. There's this wave-like movement called peristalsis all the way through. This total movement should take 8 to 12 hours. So, not saying that what you take in you eliminate. That's not what we're doing. You bring it in, it's processed, goes through the intestine, small intestine, down the large intestine, it's stored for a period of time. But the movement happens around the material that's in there, the stimulus. It takes about an hour for this wave to get all the way down to here. So when you eat something, ideally, if this system is working properly, if it's not been suppressed or clogged or damaged in any way, this wave of peristalsis works through the system, and within an hour of eating, you should have the urge to eliminate. That's a absolutely healthy, working system. Now, little babies do it right. You know, you see them lying there sleeping, and their little tummy is just being real nice and calm, and then you wake them up, and they get their food, and they sit there, and you go to put some food in their mouth, and they start to eat, and they're enjoying all that, and they take a pause, and the next thing you know, they're sitting there going, this real strange look on their face. Well, you know what's happening. They eat, seems like one meal in, one meal out, and that's kind of the way it is, but there is meals stored in between. Let's say you go to your standard allopathic person and you say to them, you know, I'm not sure I'm working properly here in my elimination system. Am I constipated? And the standard answer that comes back is well, how often do you go? And you say, well, gosh, 2 times a week, maybe 3. And they say, well, that's normal for you. Well, it may be normal for you, but it's not healthy. We're a nation that thinks sometimes 1 bowel movement a week is healthy. And the longer you stay in a natural health field, you're going to find out we do a lot of talk about this elimination system. Anything that's stored in here, remember we're pulling water out of it. And that water gets back into the bloodstream through the liver, kidneys, and gets recycled through the body, cleaned up. The problem is this system is designed to only handle a certain amount of toxins. With years of what would be constipation, and I don't mean clinical constipation. Clinical constipation, the doctor says, well, are you impacted? Do we have to go in there with a spoon and a pair of, you know, all this stuff and get you cleaned up? That's constipation to the medical profession. Constipation to most of us in the health business is 1 bowel movement a day. That's constipated because you're not moving everything out. You know, you eat 3 meals a day and you eliminate 1. So the next day you eat 3 more and eliminate 1. What happened to the other 4? Then you eat 3 meals the next day and eliminate 1. Okay, you've eliminated 3 meals and eaten 9. What happened to the 6? Where are you going by the end of the week? That's a major problem. This system is trying to just remove moisture. It is not a digestive organ. However, with that water will carry toxins. There was a very, very famous cowboy actor person a few years ago, and everybody thought he was a great guy, great actor and everything, and he had starred in a lot of good movies, big, tall, handsome guy. I'm not going to mention his name because maybe I have to pay him royalties or something, but his nickname was the Duke. At his autopsy, they found 75 pounds of stored fecal matter in his colon. Now, if any of you saw his later movies, it looked like he was carrying a basketball. Well, what did he die of? Oh, well, had lung cancer, had throat cancer along the way. I said, well, that's what he died of. What the man died of was toxicity. And I'm sure that it was a matter of nutrition and a matter of working schedules and everything, because we start real early suppressing this peristaltic action. We don't suppress the swallowing part because most of us enjoy that. And the digestion kind of takes place whether you like it or not most of the time. We begin to suppress it down in this area. We suppress the urge. If the toilet training is not done properly, if there's any verbal abuse, any kidding about use of the toilet and the type of bowel movement that's had, people begin to suppress this. Little kid, got to get to school, got to get up, got to get early, eat breakfast, run off to catch the bus. Get to school, don't have time to go, got to go play, got to go to recess, got to go back to class, only have so long to eat lunch, don't have any time afterwards, can't sit down, read a book, relax. And unfortunately, many places today, the facilities are so filthy you don't want to go in there anyway. Then you grow up and you get in the workplace. And you're sitting there at your computer, you're sitting there at your desk, or you're driving in your car and you got something to do, you got to be there, you're afraid the boss is going to get on your case. You get a little peristalsis going there and you go, okay, oh, I can do 15 minutes more. Meanwhile, you're putting what I call the 3 whites down there: white flour, white sugar, white milk. Those form cement. To that, you add a lot of animal protein. And I don't mean you specifically, I mean this nation. Add a lot of animal protein. No fiber. We got the 3 whites and we got animal protein. This thing starts to get clogged up. The texture of this muscle, this tube, should look like about like that. Kind of like if you've ever seen a swimming pool vacuum hose. Right? What happens is as you spend a lifetime of suppressing peristalsis and putting this thing, stuffing it full of the 3 whites and protein, it fills up these little haustras. And the muscular movement becomes very, very difficult. And sometimes it will even start to close the old water pipe down here. Now, point of emphasis here, constipation, is just another form of clogging the pipe, but also when you say, well, I get diarrhea every now and then, you're still constipated. Your body goes into an emergency situation, it's trying to clean this thing out, and usually what you do is just run the center. You don't clean out the haustras, the convolutions, the texturing of the tube. So don't think because you go to your regular bowel movement once a week and then once every other week you have an attack of diarrhea that you've cleaned this thing out. That's not the case. It's become toxic. And your body's trying to dump it, but it can't. The best thing for this system is fiber, and we'll talk about that when we get to the herbal board. Fiber keeps this stuff moving. Fiber provides bulk to hold some moisture. Fiber does some scrubbing. Fiber gives something for these muscles to work against and keep this thing moving as peristalsis goes through here like a wave of movement. If we spend a lifetime of suppressing the peristalsis, and then we start to coat this thing with all the food types that I talked about, and no fiber, after a while, you don't even feel peristalsis down there. The other thing that starts to happen is this thing starts to balloon. Normally, colon's about that big around. Lots of circumstances, ways we found it with, we use iridology, we can see it in there. I've seen x-rays, barium enema type x-rays, things of that nature. Ballooning of this organ. I'm sure that the Duke gentleman, to get 75 pounds in there, had a lot of ballooning, and it was really becoming quite obvious, this organ pushing out. When that happens, it starts to press on other organs. All kinds of discomfort. Those toxins are trying to be pulled out of this system. The next organ in line, as far as detoxing, is the liver and then the kidneys. So when this system's overloaded, they try to be a backup system and pick up the toxins that are coming out of there, and then they become overloaded, and they've got their other jobs to do too. So something in here is going to break down. Tremendous amount of colon cancer in this country happens because of this clogging. And it's just absolutely amazing that the standard allopathic system does not recognize cleanliness within the colon, again, perhaps only when it's totally impacted or when it's time to go do surgery. Then they flush it out. But in between, not a clue. Hey, I don't care. Whatever you do is normal for you unless you're dying of pain. If you're not having those peristaltic movement and the urge to have elimination within an hour of eating, there needs to be some work done. Coming out of this organ, you can see little red lines down here somewhat, there's blood vessels. There's also a tremendous amount of nerves come off the colon. In the chiropractic system, you'll find a long column of the spine here, and it has all kinds of nerves that come out of it, and that refers to organs in the body. Well, the same thing happens here. Off of this organ, there's a whole series of nerves that come off. If you pick up a good manual on what would be called palpation, where the doctors used to do a lot of touching, feeling, pushing, and wherever you said it hurt, if they were pushing on something, there are charts of referred pain. One of the most common referred pains relative to this area is ovarian. You say, it feels like I'm having a little ovarian problem here. Well, it's not that you need a hysterectomy necessarily. That may be coming. But the beginning of that process is referred pain and toxins out of the colon. Virtually 80–90% of the people that we've worked with and information that we get from our associates, women who have ovarian cancer, inevitably, 80–90%, have spent a lifetime thinking one bowel movement a day is okay. Some a whole lot less. Prostate cancer, same thing. Almost any cancer in the body, but real specifically with the ovarians. Excuse me. I had a experienced client lost the use of this arm. Had some episodes of pain and discomfort in this shoulder for years. Started working with the client, found a history of constipation. Client thought one bowel movement every couple of days was okay. So we've got this pain in the shoulder, and the client had gone to a couple other standard practitioners, and they said, well, you might have a rotator cuff problem. You probably got an old sports injury. You probably have this and that. We want to go in there and operate. Take a look. Oh, okay. Client was also told that they had degenerative discs. The father and the brothers of this client was also told they had degenerative discs, and they all had operations. Now, what saved this client was that the family said, don't get the operation. Didn't make any difference for us. So, the client never did. When I started working with the client, this situation in the arm here used to come and go, but when I came into the picture, it came and stayed. So, we did a lot of things, and it got to the point where the arm was totally useless, but painful all the time. Couldn't, about in this position, maybe, was moderate pain. Couldn't sleep at night, couldn't lay on, couldn't use it. The muscle started to atrophy, disappear from lack of use. Did an iridology exam when we did our workup, and what I found was right here off the colon was a stricture. Like that, pointing on the chart at that shoulder. So that stricture combined with the history of constipation, okay, let's work on that. So we started doing bowel cleansing, strengthening the system, getting it clean, working on it. Within 2 days, client could lie on their back all night for the first time in their entire adult life to sleep. No degenerative disc problem. Got up in the morning, used to have to crawl out of bed, do the stretching thing. Didn't have to do that anymore. Took about 2 months or more to get the shoulder back, but the minute we started doing this, this pain started to fade, become intermittent, fade, intermittent, fade, get less and less and less. UC started. It took almost 4 months to get the muscle back in this arm, but we got the use of it back in a very short period of time. Didn't go in there, didn't operate, didn't do a rotator cuff, didn't do any of that stuff. The problem was here. Referred pain, referred toxicity. So any of you that are studying the eye, that's one of the good things, big, important thing that you need to understand is the colon and that it refers out into the body, especially when you've got a major problem showing up, like a stricture. Ladies have a lot of problems many times with pregnancy, hormonal changes in the body, nutritional, metabolism, all those changes taking place. They tend to get constipated. This part of the colon fills up rather rapidly, and because it is kind of folded over like you see here and leaning forward, there's a thing called a prolapse can occur. So it's very important to help a pregnant woman not be constipated. As this transverse colon can prolapse forward, the bladder's right in here. It's going to begin to press on the bladder. And if it's not taken care of in its early stages, that prolapse becomes almost a permanent situation. Now, there's things we can do to work with that and help correct it. But once this tissue is completely stretched out of shape, there's very little that we can do to totally restore it. It's like you blow up a balloon and you let the air out. It doesn't look like it did before, but you've let the air out. And that's kind of what happens here. So there's some very, very safe things that a mother can do, a new oncoming mother, to keep from getting constipated. It's absolutely critical. This organ, it's something we just don't pay any attention to. We grow up, unless we're in a family that's in the natural health business, we don't have a lot of potty talk. It's like, oh, don't talk about that. We're a nation that we walk into the bathroom and we do our thing, and then we go, whoop, that doesn't belong to me, and we run out the door. We have no responsibility for that. Not true. There's a tremendous amount of information there. I know when I was on tour duty in Korea, before the health business, I'd see a little mama-san on the side of the road out in the farm country, and she'd have her little baby, and she'd set him down on the side of the road, and he'd kind of squat and do his thing, and she'd be standing with a stick poking through it. And I responded from my frame of reference and said, "Oh, how stupid and disgusting." That mama-san knew exactly how to read that material. Knew how to tell what was in there, what should be there, what shouldn't be there, the condition, a lot of indicators of the baby's health. That's what she was doing. Now I'm going to give you some guidelines. Okay? So be careful who you share this with if they're not ready for the potty talk thing. Human bowel movement, the elimination, normally should be about size and length of a reasonably healthy banana. Should be medium to dark brown, fairly well formed, and shouldn't have an odor. And how many people grab that with shock? The human body, in all of its functions, unless there is something out of balance, doesn't have an odor. You shouldn't have an odor under your arms. You shouldn't have an odor in your bowel movement. Those odors primarily are from bacterial imbalances, toxicities coming out of the system. Not the fact that we stink. The only reason the Indians could smell the white man is not because his skin was white, it's because he was eating garbage. The Indians are eating the bushes. Big difference. In the African countries, in the traditional nutrition, where people eat a lot of fiber and vegetable diets, colon cancer's down. Don't have it. Cholesterol, down. Don't have problems with it. That's a civilized, westernized nation's problem. Ignore this thing. We pump it full of the 3 whites. We make the cement down there. We clog it up with a lot of animal protein. This is a tough class to give to somebody who is raised on steak and potatoes. It's really tough for them to understand this. But if you'll profile those people, you'll find high incidences of colon cancer. You'll find high cholesterol. You'll find all those other problems. This organ, very simple to take care of. One of the things we'll talk about in a minute is water. The other is fiber. They're the 2 basic things that keep this organ clean, moving out, and you feeling better all the time. I think we've pretty well covered the mechanics here. The things that happen to this organ, we talked about colon cancer. You can also develop from this ballooning. There's another thing that sort of happens. It's not a full balloon, but everywhere one of these blood vessels or nerves leaves the wall of the colon, it's possible, I'm going to give you an even bigger picture of the colon here. Let's say this is the colon wall, and there's a nerve coming out here. This area here tends to be a little weak, and let's say you're being real constipated, you can develop a little tiny balloon. And sometimes those little tiny balloons get filled with material. And that's not too bad. You keep the fiber pumping through there. But if you keep them clean with fiber and so forth, nothing happens in there. Sometimes what happens is they get some bacteria trapped in there. And they get inflamed. And when this inflammation gets bad enough, it ends up on the inside of your body. And you've got a serious, serious health problem. And we're going to talk about that when we get over the other side. So the greatest thing you can do for the colon, again, to keep from these little pockets from forming, is fiber and moisture. It'll prevent the ballooning. It'll prevent the little pockets from forming. It'll keep everything clean in this system. Hanging right here off the end of the large intestine is the appendix. Now the appendix, we know, probably back even when I was a small child, was an unnecessary organ, and if you had any problems with it, they just arbitrarily went in and cut it out. The appendix is now found to be part of the glandular system. That's where some of the studies are going. Part of the lymph system. Some of the studies are going there. But it tends to fill up with, if this system's not kept clean, parasites. I know one of my clients said that when she was a young mother and she had a child with an appendix problem, went to the doctor, and it was an old school doctor, old family doctor, and he said, every single appendix I've taken out has been infested with parasites and worms. So you don't have to lose that thing. You really ought to keep it. It's kind of like tonsils. It's not, there was not a mistake made when this organism was designed. It has a function. It's just that our brilliant scientific minds haven't focused on it and found every single detail about it yet. So fiber, again, and cleanliness are the main things to keep it clean. A parasitic infection or infestation can affect the colon. It can affect the small intestine. It can go all the way up to the liver and the kidneys. We don't have to have those things. We'll talk about some of the things we can do to work with that. Another thing that affects this area quite a bit is candida, or yeast overgrowth. Within the intestinal tract, there's friendly bacteria. Down in the large intestine, it's primarily acidophilus. In the small intestine, it's bifidus. And then there are other colonies of friendly bacteria built around that. We're just going to kind of stay with acidophilus right now. Acidophilus balances the colon. It helps you make vitamin K, B12, riboflavin, thiamine. So if someone says, well, I'm a little B12 deficient, give me a shot. Maybe you ought to look at colon balance. If you have enough acidophilus in your colon, you will make all the B12 you need. Major immune system going on here. Keep the thing healthy. Keep the friendly bacteria up. Things that kill friendly bacteria, we'll discuss them a little bit when we get to the chart, would be standard antibiotics. I mean, we're giving antibiotics to babies. Chlorine in the water kills friendly bacteria. Caffeine weakens it, kills it. And the oxidants, the free radicals. You go outside, breathe a little car exhaust, do a little cleaning with some laundry soaps and things. You start the free radical thing, kill off your friendly bacteria. That weakens the system. Yeast, which is always there, can become the more powerful organism. Sometimes it coats the walls of the colon, and that becomes rather obvious. You have some inflammatory situations. Sometimes it doesn't do that. It just leaves this area, and it does that by shooting its roots through the intestinal wall when it's in charge, changes form, and then goes in and infests other parts of the body. Now, we're not going to get into a yeast syndrome situation here, but this is where it starts, and it starts there because the system has been allowed to be weakened without its proper cleansing, proper fluids, and so forth. We're going to kind of leave the mechanical and the illness part here, and we're going to go over to the herb chart and talk about some of the things we can do to help that system. Right here in the middle of the board, ought to have a big old neon light on it. Water. The cheapest medicine we can get our hands on. Water is the single greatest thing you can do for your colon. It's the single greatest thing you can do for your entire body. Keep it hydrated. Keep the colon with its proper amount of water. The next greatest thing that needs to be with that water is the fibers. We generally use slippery elm. In the case of maybe Crohn's, colitis, an irritated bowel, along with that, I'll sneak that right under there, psyllium. That's the most common fiber that you would run across. There's been some products on the market for a long time that have a reasonable amount of fiber in them. There's been a whole marketing plan by a pharmaceutical company designed around adding psyllium to the diet to keep the colon clean. Another one that you would run into, gargum. Gargum has some unique characteristics about it. It picks up a little more toxins than psyllium does. Both of these also help lower cholesterol. Excellent. Pectin is another one. Pectin occurs naturally in apples. I think Johnny Appleseed was into something. Apple a day keeps the doctor away. You not only get the fiber from the covering of the apple, the skin, there's fiber inside, but you get this nice little water-absorbing fiber called pectin. Pectin also will pick up a lot of toxins and take them out of the colon. Up here on the top, probably one of the single greatest herbs we can ever do for ourselves, especially for the colon, would be garlic. Now, if all of us ate the appropriate amount of garlic, it'd be user-friendly. In the colon, it does a great job keeping unfriendly bacteria under control. It does a wonderful job with the yeast. It would be a major part of a yeast program. It's a great cold pill. Garlic's a good circulatory, lowers blood pressure, lowers cholesterol. It's a fantastic herb. So somebody says, oh, well, I start eating garlic and I start to stink. It's not the garlic. If you've ever cut a garlic clove and you go, well, that smells like garlic, but it doesn't smell like Uncle Harry. The problem is, in garlic, active ingredient is sulfur. P-H-U-R or F-U-R. I guess it depends on which dictionary you go to. Sulfur is the active ingredient. Sulfur, when it's combined with other elements, gets real odorous. So if you have toxins in your body, the sulfur in the garlic is going to try to combine with them and take them out of your system. Some of it will go out in the stool, some of it will come out through your skin, which is a major elimination organ. So if someone starts taking garlic and they're just beginning their cleansing and their body cleaning, they're going to smell a little bit. Once they continue cleaning and eating the garlic, there is no odor other than a little bit of garlic. But if someone eats garlic, eats garbage, eats garlic, eats garbage, they will stink. It's the sulfured compounds, the toxic compounds that you're smelling. I have plantain here. Plantain is an excellent herb for soothing. It's a little antiseptic. We would use it combined with slippery elm in an irritated bowel situation. Magnesium is the mineral food of muscle. Many times in a constipation situation, check the magnesium. Deficiency in magnesium. You can take some magnesium capsules, take an Epsom salts bath. To take Epsom salts directly is dramatic. It may not be necessary. Just raise and balance the daily nutritional requirements for magnesium, and the odds are you'll have much better regularity. Marshmallow, mucilaginous herb. It deals with mucus. That's why it's here primarily. If you have a situation where you're eating foods that generate mucus in the body, like dairy products, or you may have a cold and you've generated some mucus, marshmallow breaks up, softens, and moves mucus through the system. Doesn't dry it out, keeps the tissue healthy, but with its law of signatures, marshmallow grows in moist, damp, low areas. You use marshmallow to treat low, moist, damp areas. It does a wonderful job at soothing and helping keep excess mucus moving through the system. We got a couple of laxatives here. Senna, cascara. Senna is what I refer to as dynamite. I don't use senna unless I have someone with a really serious constipation problem, and then we still might combine it with some other things to smooth it out because it can cause some griping and cramping. Senna is a bowel irritant, and when the bowel is irritated, it will dump water from your body back into itself to try to flush out the irritant. Hence, laxative, dump. A lot of water. It's stressful on the system, but sometimes necessary. Cascara, Cascara sagrada, on the other hand, is a liver stimulant. The bile that's produced in the liver stimulates peristalsis through the system in the smaller, large intestine. Cascara is gentler. Cascara is good for extremely long usage. There may be a little bit of staining. You know, you hear people say, oh, I can't use it because they tell me if I use laxatives, my colon will stain, I'll get these brown spots, and they can become cancer, They pigment. Okay? Cascara will not pigment stain the colon. Senna might. Cascara won't. It will give the colon a brown tone. It's been done with endoscopy. They've proven this. But within a few days to a week of discontinuing the cascara, the colon returns to pink. It doesn't cause pigmentation. It has a little herbal stain, but it will clean up. Okay. These items here I've put up for one of the major problems that happens down in the intestinal tract is the parasites. Artemisia, clove, black walnut. These three, always add some garlic. Artemisia is also known as wormwood. These three are excellent at removing parasites from the intestinal tract in general, from the body in general, but real specific to the colon. The reason cloves were used in the first place in food years and centuries ago was because of the parasites that lived in the meat. And they knew that if they put the cloves in the food while they were cooking it, you might kill some of the parasites in the meat. And you'd get a little bit of clove when you took it in. Excellent parasitic program. Down the bottom here, I already talked about acidophilus when we're on the other side. Absolutely critical to maintaining balance in the colon. I feel, my experience has been, that if you should take a vitamin every day, I think you should take acidophilus. If not every day, once a week. 4 or 5 capsules, something of that nature, at least once a week. I talked about the things that destroy the friendly bacteria all the time. If you haven't got yourself a water filter yet and you're drinking tap water, you're killing your friendly bacteria. Get the chlorine out of your water. If you're still taking a shower from water from the tap from the city system, you don't have a filter on your shower or on your house, you get enough chlorine in every shower equivalent to have drank a glass of water with chlorine in it. A lot of tests find out there's more chlorine in the city water than there is in the swimming pool. Kills friendly bacteria. Does a lot of other bad stuff. But it kills your friendly bacteria. So take some acidophilus a couple of times a week, or, it should be kept in the refrigerator. You might forget about it. But keep the bottle on the front shelf so that one of these days you'll open up and go, oh my gosh, it's time for my acidophilus. Especially if you've had any pharmaceutical antibiotic type situation. Friendly bacteria. Rebuild that colon. The ileocecal valve, I have it right next to acidophilus on purpose. The little valve where the small intestine and the large intestine join together can become irritated. The best way to protect it is to maintain a high level of friendly bacteria in your intestinal tract. It actually coats the little valve and protects it. When that valve gets stuck open, goes into a little spastic situation, it gets irritated, all these toxins that are supposed to be stored in there, waiting for you to eliminate them, start to back up. You get a lot of gas backing up, a lot of discomfort, goes back through the small intestine, it starts to bloat, and then you start getting some problems all the way back through the system. So we can relax the ileocecal valve. That's a Band-Aid. The answer is in maintaining a healthy colon, a lot of acidophilus, a lot of fiber to keep things going, getting the person regular. Trace minerals. The strength of the wall of this intestinal tract, the operation of everything in your body, is essential to have trace minerals. And I don't mean the type that come combined with a vitamin like the magnesium or the selenium. Those minerals are the grosser minerals that make the vitamins work, and you need those, and they have to work together, and they do some specific things in your body. But the trace minerals, without them, you can't use enzymes. They won't operate properly in your body without trace minerals. And without enzymatic action, you cannot repair, construct, or make new tissue or any chemical process in your body. So trace minerals are deficient in most of our food. There's a whole marketing plan that's been built around the trace mineral thing. I highly recommend that people take specifically, my favorite is the colloidal trace minerals. They're much easier to metabolize. But trace minerals of any form, if you're composting and returning to the soil plant material and you're doing all that in your garden, then your food will have trace minerals. But just because something says organic doesn't mean it has trace minerals. It just means it doesn't have bug spray. So trace minerals, basic multiple vitamin, lots of water. We talk about water all the time. Take your body weight, make it ounces, cut that in half. Let's say if you weigh 160 pounds, that's an 80. That's 80 ounces of water for you a day. We've got fibers. We talked about slippery elm. Slippery elm is used for kind of an irritated situation. It's very soothing, but it's a good fiber. Psyllium is the most common. Gargum, pectum, sometimes these things get combined. But eating a high fiber diet, 75% vegetable being leafy green, that kind of thing. You will maintain the fiber in your system. Eating highly processed grains, you've lost all the fiber. It needs to be things that grow from the ground and are green and have got lots of fiber in them. There's lots of other things we can do here. We could get into Crohn's and colitis, and we would use slippery elm here. But there's a lot of things, a lot of deficiencies that cause the intestinal tract, specifically what we're talking about today, the large intestine, to become irritated and inflamed or inefficient in its operation. It's really, really simple to take care of it. Eat good, healthy food. Eat clean food. We talked about parasites. You can get parasites eating in a restaurant. Somebody back in the kitchen dropped something on the floor and went, hey, I'm putting this back on a plate. You got a parasite. Doesn't mean you're a dirty person. If you've been traveling out of the country, risk is even greater. If you've got this cute little dog or cat or bird, and you're going, you got a parasite. Parasite cleanse at least once a year, maybe twice. High fiber diet. Make sure you're taking your trace minerals. Lots of water. And when you feel peristaltic action and you're sitting at your computer, you say, hey, boss man, I got to go take a break. And if he says, well, you're fired, you go, well, I'm fired. I know, you can't do that. But my point is, if you keep this system clogged and dirty, and you kill your peristaltic action, because someone else wants you to do that, is that someone else going to pay for your ileostomy, your colostomy? Is that someone else going to pay for your hemorrhoids? Is that someone else going to pay for your discomfort? Is that someone else going to pay for the breakdown of your tissue throughout the rest of your system? Is that person going to buy your walker for you when you're in the old folks' home? I don't think so. If you want long life with quality, take care of this elimination system. Basic rule, good stuff in, process it properly, get it out on time. It's something that is really simple to do, but we don't pay any attention to it. We offer you this information so that you can have a better life. We appreciate your sharing your time with us, and we hope you'll go share this information with others. It's real simple. You can give people the gift of health. You can give them a long life with quality. And we ask you to do that. And we thank you for sharing your time. We'd like to remind you that at the beginning of this presentation you saw a disclaimer. And we appreciate it if you would understand that this information is just for educational purposes only. It is never meant to take the place of medical treatment or diagnosis. Please keep that in mind as you share it with people. And we do appreciate your sharing this information with people, because the greatest gift you can give to someone is their health and their well-being and understanding of themselves. We hope you'll do that.